Hello, good morning, everyone. Rainbow and love. We're at the Learning to Birth webinar series, which is where we interview some of the world's most inspiring thought leaders on pregnancy and birth. And today we have with us Sandy B. Simmons from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Sandy.
Well, thank you. I'm very honoured to be here.
It's really good to hear everyone. Sandy B is an international author, speaker, Naturopathic-Nutritionist, Fertility and Lactation Specialist, and practices biological medicine. And Sandy's also the creator and director of Simply Better Health Company. That's a lot there. That's a really big life that you live. I'm actually interested to hear what biological medicine is. What is biological medicine?
Okay, well, biological medicine is a term that's been used for many years. It started off, probably before what I know as biological medicine, by a man named Carvo Arola. He was a naturopath back in the 60s, and he coined the term. And basically it means doing no harm. So it's a little bit like naturopathy, but it was before that.
Oh, wow. Well, we'll get into all of that. And I guess it'd be really good to hear, to start with, what your backstory was, how you ended up being the wonderful advocate, for healthy food and nutrition and everything that you are.
Okay, so it goes back really to family, to having many health issues in our family, from asthma to eczema to heart conditions, cancer, you name it. Our family seems to have gone through it. And after I had my children, I thought, I don't want to continue this on. It's not going to be my life. I started to get a touch of arthritis, and I thought, no, I don't need that. I don't want that in my life. So it started me on a journey of just exploring what else is available outside of mainstream medicine. And I'd always had a little bit of a bent towards natural products and the natural world. And so I stepped into that and progressed through it just to study, and one thing led to another, and 35 years later, this is me.
Wow, that's a great journey. That's a really great inspiring thing, actually, to be able to go, yeah, my family, that might be my family history. That's what I've grown up with, but I'm choosing something different for myself. What choices can I make? What can I learn? And, that's about you choosing your own path. And that's really beautiful to hear.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. And I guess just to add there, with the fertility issue, I had a problem conceiving. I probably wasn't that old. I was about 26, 27. But I was in a high profile corporate job in the city, absolutely exhausted, always had trouble with my digestive system, and all I could eat was potato and white rice. Nothing else would stay down in my system. And here I am trying to get pregnant. And then suddenly the switch went on, and I thought, nah, this isn't working. So I actually left work. And as soon as I left work, unburdened myself of all my daily duties. In that respect, everything started to come together. It took me a little while to recover, but I got pregnant and started to realise what was going on in the world. Now that's back 36, 37 years ago now, and I don't see too much difference, except I think now it's probably worse. So yeah. That's what headed me in the direction of the fertility. And with the breastfeeding, I've been in the breastfeeding world for that many years as well, with both my children, and have finally went on to become a lactation consultant. And that just, being a nutritionist, that is the first part of any human being's nurturing, really, apart from being in the womb.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just thinking how, the world, I think that often I was surprised when I was young, the state of the world. I was like, it can get better, it will get better. And on average, I think you're right, it's gotten worse. But on the other hand, the information's out there now so that the people who want it, you know, they can find it and go on that journey of healing and recovery. Whereas back in those days, you know, when like people like yourself, you had to fight for that information and fight for that choice, and you know, discover it all for yourselves, really. And yeah, you know, you created the Simply Better Health kind of framework, and that inspires everything that you do and all of your advocacy and programs. What is that framework, and can you explain it to us?
Yeah, sure. So I put Simply Better Health together. That's actually a synonym for my initials, Sandy B, and my maiden name is Harradine. So that's how that came about back in the 90s. I've always had this dream of putting together a place for women to come and their partners to come and birth in nature, and for people to pass away in nature. That's been in my consciousness for probably 40 odd years now, and hopefully coming to fruition before I go into the next dimension. But Simply Better Health is a company, and it underpins the 3 areas that I like to cover in all my work, which is on our website, we call it the flight deck. So we have our arrivals lounge, we have our transit lounge, and then we have our departure lounge. And so I've got those in 3 different areas, so that for people to understand that the arrival part is extremely important. It's the foundation of every human being's health, really. And the transit, we're all in, and we all come up with different issues in our lives, etc. But the end of life is also extremely important. And I see those 2 balance what goes on in the middle part, in the transit part. And so that's the basic structure. And why have I done it? I've done it because I just want to, I don't know, it's a very innate part of me to just be, I'm part of nature, and I want to get my messages across to the people now that, as you've said, they have access to so much information, but some of it to me isn't really true, and I want to get the truth out there. That's where I come from.
That's beautiful. Like there's, you know, obviously for millions of years, humans and, you know, our ancestors have given birth in nature. And I saw a beautiful pictures actually, I think from the Caribbean recently, a lady, you know, a traveling family, they gave birth in the ocean over there. And it reminded me of, you know, the Russian water birth movies, you know, when they give birth in those movies in the, you know, freezing cold Russian, you know, ocean. And it's just a beautiful thing to be able to give birth, I think, in nature. For my first baby, I had a photo shoot in Byron Bay with Donatella Parasini. He's a beautiful, you know, photographer there of babies and kids. And yeah, she took me near her house to where, her house at the time, to where traditionally was the indigenous like birthing pool in the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's actually this pool that's a tidal pool, but the water in it is red from all the tannins of the tea trees hanging over it. And that's, you know, the story is that that's where the local indigenous women would come and birth, and it's just amazingly beautiful. So I totally resonate with the idea that you want to create an environment, you know, that's natural for people to come and birth in. I think if anyone's listening who has that vision and can help Sandy with it, or connect her to someone who can help her, please, you know, reach out to me or Sandy. Let's do this. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to create.
I just think it's a fabulous, not just for the parents and the mum to experience the birth, but the child coming in, you know, they're coming into a completely beautiful natural space rather than, you know, the alternatives that we've sort of grown into. And I say grown into because, you know, go back to my grandmother, she had 8 children, she had them all at home. Nobody went to hospital. And for some reason, everything's gone a little what I call topsy-turvy, and there's a lot of panic and stress put on new mums now. in the system, which I am concerned about. I feel that that's not only impacting on them, it's impacting on their baby, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's so important that mums know that they're good, they're enough, they're doing the right thing, they're not doing anything to kill themselves or kill their babies. You know, sometimes things go wrong, but that's life and it's not your fault, you know, and
that's right.
Totally de-stress, totally de-stress. Now, you want to connect everyone to nature's way. What led you into that, and what do you feel nature's way actually is?
Okay, so nature's way to me is about connecting to your innate self. So trusting your intuition. Now, everybody has intuition. No one's exempt and no one has failed or anything like that. It's just we're not in touch with it. And if we work with our own self to know what it is that we need and what we can work with nature itself, I feel that we can get somewhere, and I don't mean back as in backwards, I mean we get back at the gift that we've got of the life we have. And the life that we've been given needs to be revered. It needs to be nurtured. And the best person to do that is yourself. You can have somebody else reflecting back to you what they see or what they believe is going on for you, but you know more than they do. And that's something that I'd love people to remember. And that's what I believe nature's way is, working with nature and working with yourself.
Look, I absolutely agree, because, you know, I think we all have our intuition. I certainly had intuitions when I was younger, but I didn't know that I could listen to them, because the wisdom of the world, school, family, society, culture was so different. It was like, no, whatever you're thinking and feeling, they're totally wrong. And so I would follow those things, and then my intuitions would always end up being correct. And then I'd sort of like, you have to deal with the consequences, don't you? And then I learned that, yes, my intuitions were right. But sometimes I'd feel like that intuition, I'm just going to do this other thing anyway, because I know better. I can change this. I can create this. I'll do it. I'll make it work. And it never worked. So now I'm at the point in my life where it's like, that intuition comes up, I damn well listen. Because
yeah,
I'm going to panic otherwise.
Yeah. Yes, it's something that I think we self-doubt ourselves a lot. I can go back to when I was young as well, and I'm sure most people probably can, where I said to my mum about her sister, I said, her throat, there's something wrong with her throat. I must have been about 6 or 7. I said, it's all red. So I was seeing, you know, a lot of inflammation and some sort of red area around there. And I said, and her eyes are popping out of her head. And Mum said, you can't say things like that. And I said, but that's what I can see. And she said, you mustn't see things like that. So I started to be shut down. It's probably a very familiar story with different scenarios. But my auntie went on to she had a huge thyroid problem, and nobody had thought about it or anything else. She was very thin. And so, yeah, so I can now correlate those two things together. But at the time I was, you know, admonished for having seen anything like that. And, you know, I've worked with energy, I've worked with all sorts of bioenergy or many different energy systems over the years. And I then started to realise that there's much more to us than what we see in this physical form.
Absolutely. And when a mum comes to you and she's you know, either dealing with fertility or she's pregnant, she's having a baby, you know, what sort of choices is she going to have to make? What sort of guidance do you provide her with those choices?
Well, majority of women that come to me are having problems getting pregnant. So we start with this preconception phase where we look at everything that's going on in that woman's life and her partner's life to see what we can, you know, come up with. And I guess it's like I dissect things and have a look at perhaps their lifestyles, their nutrition, exercise work, mindset. You know, do they actually want to have children? Because there's some people that have come to me and really they've both had a dialogue with each other, and then they've said, I don't know if I really want to have children. But it's this, all people have this inner desire to reproduce. It's our nature to do that. But it may not be in the form of a baby. It might be in the form of helping the world in some other way. You know, it doesn't need to be like that. So that is sometimes a big conversation that is had at the very beginning. And then if they decide that they really do want to have children, then, you know, we go on and we can work sometimes for 6 months to declutter. Declutter medications, you know, that are possible to let go of, maybe back down on the work, you know, nurture themselves, do things very differently to, you know, what they're living. The majority of people I find think that their lifestyles are fine until somebody else can look at it and just say to them, well, you know, if this tweaked here and you did this here and did that there, you know, things change. And, you know, quite a lot of the times they'll go on to get pregnant naturally. It is the mindset and the intention I find is probably the biggest hurdle.
That's really interesting to hear. And there absolutely is no shame in not wanting to have a baby. I mean, I spent my whole younger life not wanting children. And then my children basically said to me, we're coming. Both of them was like, my son was like, I'm coming. I was like, okay. And then my daughter was the same. And I just, you know, I accepted that, you know, and I'm so grateful for them. But, you know, we live in a time now in the world when, you know, not everybody's going to want to have children, not everyone needs to, and there's so many children out there needing love, and animals and plants and oceans and sky. Everything needs our love right now, and everything is our baby if we really want it to be, you know.
Exactly. And I guess I've had insight into that because my sister doesn't have children. She chose not to have children, and my husband's brother hasn't gone on to have children either, and that's the sum total of our family. So my children don't have any cousins, so, you know, direct cousins, so to speak. But that's okay. We've sat with that, and, you know, that's their choice. It's got nothing to do with us. Yeah. And they've had a very fulfilled life with what they've gone on to do, and they've probably been able to do a lot more because, hey, being parents does take up some time. And it takes you away from perhaps some of the things that you might love to do. And that's not to discount anything. It's just we've got to juggle our time more. And so if people choose not to have children, you know, that's absolutely fine. Not a problem.
When a mum comes to you and, you know, she's conceived and she's pregnant, is there, you know, do you advocate that she breastfeeds after she's given birth? What support do you give her as a lactation specialist?
Yeah, well, when people come to me when they're pregnant, I've usually seen them beforehand, or they've just heard about me as a lactation consultant, but I work with them on a month-to-month basis with nutrition and the growing needs and the digestive issues that come up all the way through. I check their breasts if they've come to me for breastfeeding, because it's really important to understand about breastfeeding and how it works, which is really quite simple. It's been made quite, in my mind, a very difficult procedure, but it's just a natural progression. But the things we're looking for are any issues that might be coming up. There's quite a few women have had surgery on their breasts. You know, will I still be able to produce milk? Nipples have been perhaps moved, or we've got different shaped nipples or inverted nipples. There's all sorts of issues that can be seen beforehand, and they're quite often missed. So when I often go home to do home visits, I'll see an issue and I say, you know, were you checked out? And they say, no, no one looked at this part of me. They were all interested in down here. And I said, well, you know, this is a really important aspect to check. And so month to month, I'm checking on what's going on for them. They might have concerns, especially first-time mums, on different issues, and I'm happy to talk through them with you know, whatever's coming up, or I might even refer them on to somebody if it's a particular issue. But they're important things to go through and understand as you are pregnant. Sometimes there's not enough. From my perspective, being at the other end of life, there's not enough placed on nurturing the mother when she's actually pregnant. There's a lot placed on her, and it's not the best place to be, I don't think, when you're under a lot of stress, having to work right up until the knocker, so to speak. It just doesn't make sense in my book. So I get people to rethink about what they're doing. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with if somebody wants to work right up till then. If everything's done for them at home and they get their rest, that's absolutely fine. But not to be, you know, so overtired, you're not going to be able to give birth in the way that you'd like to. So
yeah, I don't think you know, anyone could really anticipate potentially how exhausted you will feel by the end of that pregnancy. I mean, you're carrying around all this extra, you know, weight, whether it's water or baby or, you know, this pudge, you know, that you put on, you know, and you're you know, just moving the blood around your body makes you tired, let alone trying to walk around. And, you know, look, even if you stay fit, and I was really fit through both my pregnancies, and I was still exhausted, and you don't realize what it's going to do you?
No, and I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody does. And, you know, it's hindsight is always an excellent thing. But I think if we came back to listening to ourselves, then we would go and standing up for ourselves. I think that's something that perhaps as society has progressed, if we call it that, we've become, women have had to take on roles that they didn't have to in the past, and it's sometimes detrimental in certain circumstances, and I think that's just one of them. When a woman is pregnant, they need nurturing, and because they're nurturing this little bub that's coming, and I don't think society as a whole sees that as a precious gift or something worthwhile.
No.
Yeah, I think that mindset needs to change somehow, and if we're talking about breastfeeding, that's a continuum of feeding the baby through the umbilical cord. It's not there now, it's from here. Even if it's just for a short time, it's that link that gets them into this world. You know, they've been born, they're in shock, and it's just that link that they have. And as I said, it doesn't matter for how long. I mean, it's good if you can do it for a long time, but even just in the early days to get their colostrum in so that their immune system is really set up for life. Yeah.
When a mum is breastfeeding, you know, and she is having to nurture herself and her baby, I mean, breastfeeding takes a huge toll on you, really. When she comes to you, what sort of things do you advocate to her in terms of nutrition? Like, how does she look after herself?
Well, the most important thing is for her to eat, because I find a lot of mums just, you know, you get to see them around lunchtime and they haven't had anything. Quite often, if the partner's there, I say, can you make sure that before you go to work she's had something, even if it's really early? Because, yeah, that's often why they get tired, because breastfeeding is actually quite relaxing. If you only breastfeed, you don't have to make up bottles. You don't have to use the breast pump to get extra bottles of milk. That's if you're allowed to just do that, or you allow yourself to just do that, it's actually quite a relaxing thing, and you don't get too tired. But I think a lot of it is women get back into life very quickly these days, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's very tiring. You know, the first 4 to 6 weeks is really a rest time. Now, there's a lot of cultures around the world where they, all the women in the society, they just support the women in those first 6 weeks. You know, they bring them food, they look after them, and they're nurtured, and they're just allowed to be with their baby. You know, that doesn't happen here in the West. And that's why I think we get tired. We don't have that time to recover, and we don't get the nurturing that we need. It's the same, it's that last little bit of continuum past being pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no after giving birth and having that break. You're not weak, and you know, you deserve it. You deserve it, and you know, find the people who can take care of you and feed you and look after you, so you feel good about taking that rest. Yeah,
Exactly. At least now we have a little bit of a reprieve with if women are working, and you know, the government's come to the party. It's on some level to help with finances, but you know, we need to do a lot more. There's, you know, you look at some of the Scandinavian countries and some of the things they have in place there. We have a bit of a way to go. I wrote a paper a few years ago on this particular topic about the differences around the world, and America, England and Australia were not up there. They were quite well down the list of looking after parents after they'd had children. So yeah, I think there's a long way for us to go here.
It's a long way, and it's really important because, you know, if you end up not being financially independent when you give birth, it makes you vulnerable to a whole lot of things afterwards, and the dynamics in your relationships change, you know, and it means that, you know, if there's any form of, you know, domestic violence or abuse, you're not free to leave because, you know, your baby and your survival's at stake, you know, and a lot of reasons why women need to be financially independent, and that's really important, and it's really good, and you know, we need to encourage that as a society and help mums who are having their babies so that they're safe at all, you know, on all levels.
Exactly, I totally agree, and I mean, it's really important for those babies. This is what I think probably most people don't really think about, because they don't sit down and have discussions about it. But this is the beginning of a new life, and you know, this baby is soaking in absolutely everything that's going on around it from the time it's conceived until, you know, birth, and then when it's out here in the world, and it's soaking all that information up about how to be in the world. And you know, we could make it better, obviously, and you know, we're all doing the best we can. Nobody's doing anything wrong. It's just, I feel that area could be looked at just by the governments as well as by parents to be. But just imagine the strength and of the character of the children, their immune systems and their minds are what concern me, especially for the first 7 years of life. Apart from being pregnant and birthing and breastfeeding, it's the vulnerability of them. They're tiny, they're small, and they're just working out what they have to do in the world to be safe, or to just get on. And you know, you're formulating a new human being.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful way of looking at it, and it's so important. Absolutely. And you've got, you know, your website's pretty interesting and comprehensive if anyone wants to take a look, but you've got in your offerings like so many different you know, possibilities under the Simply Better kind of health framework. Do you want to like we could talk about your Simply Better breath work, your Simply Better birthing, like all these courses and things that people can take with you. Do you want to step us through them all and what they all are and what's different about them?
Okay, so basically the branding is Simply Better, whatever it is. Okay, so I'll show you my book. This is the first one that I've actually got out there. This one's on preconception. At the moment, I'm writing one on conception. Then I'll write one on pregnancy, birthing and lactation. There's 5 little books. That's my love at the moment. Yeah, I've been in clinic for 30 odd years doing that middle transit bit, but I've come back to the very beginning, and that's my love at the moment. And stepping you through things. Okay, so I have not got everything on the website. It's still evolving, but the different courses that I've done, I find that posture and breath work are the 2 things that I work with people, along with their nutrition. They're just basic things. They don't cost anything. They're just free. It's just what you have. Breath work is extremely important for energy. Then when people are pregnant, or women are pregnant, men might be able to be soon too, I don't know. But the breathing is really important, and the posture when you are pregnant. And so breath work I have got in 3 courses. So it's an introduction, an intermediary, and then really the 3rd one is sort of mixed in with meditation, so that you can get really grounded and quite calm, and goes through many different scenarios that you might need to use breath work in for anxiety, all those issues that come up where you've got to breathe. So that's breath work. Birthing is really, I'm not a midwife, I'm a nutritionist. So I will go through and work with the woman when she's pregnant, and we do things like birth blessing drops. Now, these are drops to support the woman, and her partner can take them as well, but it's to support the journey of themselves and the new child. And it's based on essences. Sometimes I might put a couple of homeopathics in there as well, but really safe to take during pregnancy. And it's really to help the mind and the space around the 3 or 4 or 5, however many children that they're carrying. So that's to support them through. It's an extra sort of layer, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
So that's what your birth blessings are. Your birth blessings are those little drops, and they're essence, like flower essences? Or?
Yes, they'll be flower essences, and yes, all different types. I've got a half dozen different ranges that I use, and sometimes I have made some of my own. So stone essences and things. So yeah.
Yeah. Can people buy those from your website, or do you just tell people where to get them from?
They're not on my website at the moment. I am considering making it into, I usually just make them up for the people that come, but I'm considering getting a little bit more into that and putting it on the website.
How beautiful. All right, well, if that happens, we'll make sure that we stick them on Learning to Birth as well, huh?
Okay.
That sounds like a plan. Sandy Simmons.
And so continuing on with birthing, so there are certain homeopathics and herbs that you can take on in the last trimester that are quite safe to help with birthing.
What do you recommend? Because I mean, I took herbs, and because I had a doula the first time who was amazing. She was a real wise woman, and she, blew my mind away. All the stuff she taught me about birth and birthing. It's why I'm here today. And yeah, so herbs were so important throughout both my pregnancies. Do you want to talk about what you personally would recommend?
Yeah, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because I have a very different background. I've worked with a Russian scientist for the last 20, 25 years. And I've learnt a lot of the old remedies and recipes from old Europe. And they're the ones that I tend to use. I don't use any herbs that have already been made up. I only use, as you can see in here, in all my fancy jars, I have dried fresh organic herbs and make them into teas so that they're actually also not so extreme, if you want to call it that. It's a much softer way of doing things, especially with during pregnancy. So yes, there are a number of different herbs you can use, but I find it so individual. It's different for everybody what they might need. I mean, rose hip's a really lovely one for vitamin C and nourishing. Going off of that, I'm not a big one to take tablets, to take vitamins and tablets. It'll be either a powder if it's necessary, or it'll be through a herbal tea.
What I used to do was I used to order, there was this Tasmanian organic herb farm. I don't know if they're still around, but used to be able to order like big packets of, you know, herbs there that were fresh, and I'd brew them overnight into, you know, like the Susan Weed Wise Woman way, like I'd steep them overnight so that it's really, really thick, you know. Yeah. Not just a tea, but is it just a brew that you leave overnight literally, and you know, they were so supportive to, you just feel so like, you'd notice the days that, you know, I didn't drink them. It was like I really felt different when I did drink them. They were just, you know, gave me so much vitality.
Yeah. So we're looking at the vitality of mum. We want to keep her energy up. I may also suggest some homeopathics. But that, again, there is nothing specific. It's all very individual. So this is the hard bit. Everyone wants to know what my protocol is. And I say, well, I don't really have one because everybody's different. It's been something that I've had to stand my ground with, because people want to know all my remedies. And I said, but I don't have particular remedies. I can give you a general one, but that might not work for you. So it's a difficult one. Yeah. So not a lot of herbs and things. It's really just a lot of it's done through food. So yeah, it's just getting the food right. It's getting the combinations of foods is really important, and also the timing of foods and the amount of food that's eaten, especially in the later stages of pregnancy.
So talk to me about the timing of food. What do you recommend there?
Okay, so timing of food just means to eat within a certain time frame during the day. Eat sometimes before you get out of bed. Sounds a bit strange, but
I still do that.
That can help tremendously. But the other thing is not to eat too late. Don't eat too late, and to eat little and often. Sometimes women are having 5 small little meals during the day because they can't handle a big meal, as we all know when we've been pregnant. So timing is important, because if you're going to take, say, homeopathics or a herbal tea, it's better to take those and allow them to do their thing before you eat. Okay, so a good 20 to 30 minutes. Allow them to work before you actually eat. If you happen to forget, take them at least half an hour to an hour after you've eaten, because otherwise you're negating what they're designed to help you with. And food as medicine, if we want to call it that, eating is good to do between the hours of, say, 9 or 10 in the morning through till about 6 for women when they're pregnant. It's the time when they're upright. It's the time when they can digest things, and in small amounts. And fluids is important as well. So that's what I'm talking about with timing. And again, it might be slightly different for everybody depending on their lifestyles and what they're doing.
Yeah. It sounds like if people want to learn more, they can come to Sandy's website and book an appointment with you, because you do remote appointments with people.
Yes, I've got a clinic here. This is my clinic room at home. I am in a clinic in Carlton as well, in a women's clinic on a Tuesday, and remotely I have worked with people from all around the world, and it's just like sitting with Zoom. So you're just sitting in your lounge room like this, and we've done all sorts of things. From I've sent them programs and things to do, and we just talk about it. They can show me things, they can show me recipes, they can show me the food they've eaten and why is, or that they've made, and they wonder why on earth it's not come out right. Maybe they haven't soaked it first. There's all sorts of things, but it's just like being in a room, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, you can just show it. You can actually show the environment to someone, like, this is where I live, and this is what I do, and yeah. You know, you talk a little bit about ancient wisdom and what that has to contribute to us. Do you want to expand on what your thoughts are there?
Yes, I've been asked this a bit because it's on my website. So what I mean by ancient wisdom is really, firstly, I feel there's a disrespect of elderhood, of older people these days, but the younger generation, and I don't mean just you, just generally, don't understand.
Younger generation, I'll take that. I'll take that on the chin.
Don't understand that there are some wise things that can be passed down to them, and they're discounting everything. It's a general feeling between, you know, all my friends and their children and grandchildren. But there is a wisdom out there. It doesn't necessarily have to come from parents. There's a wisdom in nature. There's a wisdom in a lot of the old tribes that we still know. Some of them are still existing around the world. I mean, why would we discount that? Why would we not take some of that on in our lives and go, well, perhaps we're not doing the wisest things possible that we could do at the moment. But my feelings on ancient wisdom is just that we need to speak the truth. We need to go within and understand ourselves and actually be able to speak our truth and stand up and say, hey, this is what I would love. This is what I need in my life. And for the people around not to be judgmental and say, no, you can't do that. So the wisdom for me comes from inside. Sometimes the truth isn't what we feel is pretty, because we may get repercussions from it and everything else. But if we learn as children, going back to that, and teenagers, to stand in our truth, to say what we can feel, and not be admonished for it, I think that's the wisdom. That's the wisdom that we need to take forward. So it's the truth. It's speaking the truth. It's allowing the truth to come through in all the, how can I say, on the internet, it's so loud, it's so confusing, you know, getting those words out there that people really resonate with. So really, it's about everybody being in a beautiful space to allow someone to just express themselves.
Yeah.
To me, that's ancient wisdom.
That is so true. And you know, the truth is the truth. It doesn't judge itself according to how pretty it is. You know, it works on a much bigger time scale than what we're looking at. You know, cycles of the worlds, you know, everything like that. And we can't really try and contain it into, you know, the short lifespan of the human and our cultural framework, you know, and and think that we can make it fit in there, and if we don't like it, it's not pretty, well, it's obviously not true, and reject it, you know. So
Yeah.
that it's too big for that.
So yes, I feel that has somewhat got lost in our society, a lot of societies probably, and in the world generally today. And you know, if we could just listen to each other and just allow someone to express themselves without judging them, they're actually talking and finding their own way. And that's what I call unconditional love, is just to be with somebody so that they can express themselves and don't put your things on them, you know, your perceptions. Just listen.
Fantastic.
The person is just working through it themselves, and they have their own answers. You don't need to do it for them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Everyone, Sandy actually travels the world advocating, you know, a sustainable world and sustainable food. She's just come back from India. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your ideas might be about, you know, how we do activate and harness that collective consciousness to sort of move together collectively as a world towards sustainability? Because it's obviously not something that's going to work just because one person takes out the recycling or changes a light globe. Not enough, is it? When everything, you know, people, the mass or the big corporations are doing such more damage than you could ever heal in one lifetime.
That's right. I think, you know, if we have small pockets of people, which I think we already have happening around the world, I like to, I get invited to go and speak. I'm hoping to go to New Zealand later this year. How do we get people together? That's always a big question. You know, you can gather people together, but if the intention is right and we have enough of the people that can make a bigger difference, or we can engage some of the people that can make decisions in government and, you know, corporations and things like that, if somehow we can get them to see that, you know, and change their mindsets, that would be awesome. How do we do that? I don't know. We can only do our own little bit, but I think the more of us that stand up and maybe even gather together a group of friends or colleagues and just start to put the information out there. Well, it's information, it's just your knowledge that you know that things aren't right. And if the more people do that and we stand up for ourselves as individuals, I think we will get what we want happening in the end, but it's going to take time, effort, and I'd encourage anybody who would like to do that, because we can all sit down and say, oh, I can't do anything about it because it's just me. But the more people as individuals change their lifestyles at home, then it will change, reverberate onto the family and other people that they come in contact with. I think that's one of the primary ways we can make change. And, you know, collectively, it would be awesome. And I think that is happening. It's just that we're sometimes feel like we're beating our heads against brick walls. But I think those people actually know. And then it comes back to their truth. And we've got to hold them to a truth that is better for the world and humanity and all the living beings in the world, whether they're animals or plants, to sustain that for the future generations. You know, I don't have all those answers, but I'm doing my bit. If everybody does, I can encourage everybody to do their bit. That's how I think we can grow.
How do people follow you on social media, Sandy? Like, are you on Facebook? Where are you?
Yes, I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I have to say I've been a little remiss this year of not sending out newsletters, which I'm about to resurrect. My mum passed away earlier this year, which was a big thing for me. And then I've been overseas a bit. So my aim now, now that I'm a little bit freer with things in my life, is to get information out there more and get out and speak. People can get in contact with me through my website, Facebook, LinkedIn. I think I'm on Twitter as well. I think my accounts go to Twitter. It's my age. I don't sort of go along with social media that much, but realise I need to be have a presence on there. So I do have a following, especially on the pregnant Facebook page, and I'm intending to do some webinars and things like that on there to do with the books and the upcoming information going.
Fantastic. Well, keep us in the loop about that, and hopefully you tell your newsletter list that, you know, you've given a great talk here today. And you know, it's been beautiful talking with you. I'm hoping that this year for you is a really great year, and you get your books and your wisdom out there, because as you say, you know, people like yourself who've been practicing this for 35 years, you know, you didn't maybe have social media to get it all out there to the, you know, the mass population, but you had that wisdom, and that's something to really acknowledge, and, you know, for us to thank you for, because, you know, we're standing, you know, today, you know, we're standing on your shoulders, basically. You know, you've put us up there to be able to be where we are. So look, before we go, Sandy, I'd just like to ask you, you know, what your vision is for, you know, how we can shift towards global health for the, you know, this generation and the next and beyond.
Yeah, my aim, as I've already spoken about, is to get parents to be the very best health they can be before they conceive. And I think that is probably the most primary important thing anybody on the planet can do, because trying to get pregnant when you are taking lots of medication, some of it may be necessary, but, you know, some of it may not be, to be pushing yourself to the nth degree, to have all this financial materialism before you have children, is really pushing the boundaries of your own health. So to really look at that area is where I would like to concentrate my efforts, and where I would encourage everybody to talk to and talk more about that area. To move on to a sustainable world, I think we all need to get back to a little bit of gardening, a little bit of, it can be pots. If you're in an apartment, it can be pots on your veranda, it can be, but we need to start understanding how we get the food we do. I mean, it's sad when you go to schools to ask the children where they get their milk from, and they'll say in a carton in the supermarket, and there's no correlation between how it is made. I think we need to go back to basics and really find out how we can be sustainable. You know, to me, solar panels and water tanks are just basic things that we should all be taking on board. It's taking responsibility for ourselves, and just having some form of foods that you can have in the cupboard, that you know that you can cook. You can keep grains for quite a long time if you store them properly, and you know how to cook them with the least little bit of electricity or gas, and you can wrap them up and they can cook. There's all sorts of ways to become what I call self-sustaining. So you can live and understand minimally. So what I'm getting to say is, to start a family, to have children, does not need to be expensive as what it is made in the Western world. We can have, you know, we don't actually need a cot. Some people in other places use a drawer as a cot, you know, all padded up. There's lots and lots of things. We've become so materialistic that we've got to have, that I think to be more sustainable, just go back to what do we actually need? And you'll find that then we won't be driven so much by this need for things, and we understand nature more. That's the way I see life progressing in the early days of childhood and that sort of thing. I think that's important, because the mother's nurtured, the father's nurtured, he's working, or the mother's working and the father's staying home, or same-sex couples, whoever's staying at home, they can nurture the rest of the family. If you have both working so hard and so driven, that poor little child gets forgotten. And so therefore, what is that child going to be as it grows up? What are they going to think?
Nothing, not important, you know?
Exactly. And that's the very essence of humanity that we're dealing with. So for me, to be sustainable is to be responsible and to know how to live minimally. And then whatever else happens in your life, I'm not saying you can't have things, you know, go for it. But at a certain time in life, I think we need to come back to basics and just have that platform for those children to grow up with, so that they know what to do as well.
It's a beautiful vision. It's about living with integrity, really, and knowing who you are, because who we are, we're actually earth. We are made of earth. We are not separate from earth. We walk on earth. We drink earth. We breathe earth. We're part of a self-contained system. You know, the plants are making the air. We breathe that air. You know, we eat the plants. We aren't separate in any shape or form from earth. So that's who we are. And it's about nourishing ourselves. You know, we nourish earth, we nourish ourselves. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Well, it is simple. I feel that life has become very complicated and complex. And so if we can come back to simplicity, understand it, we always have that foundation. It's the foundation that we need.
Yeah, and that ancient wisdom that you speak of too.
Yeah.
That flows through us.
Yeah.
It's beautiful speaking with you today, Sandy. Melbourne's a beautiful place, and I'm hoping everyone around the world can reach out to you and connect with you, and hopefully read your book and your courses. But you know, have a great day, and thank you for being here. And everyone, you know, just come back and watch the next webinar on learning to birth. And you can follow us at Learn to Birth on Facebook and Instagram. All right. See you, everyone.
Thank you.